"What do you think you're doing, old man?" The words cut through the bustling cafeteria like a knife. Private Tyler Shaw, barely 21, stood with his arms crossed, glaring down at the man in front of him. Elliot "Mac" McAllister, a weathered 73-year-old Navy veteran, sat quietly at his usual spot, seemingly unfazed by the sharp tones directed at him. Tyler's voice dripped with condescension as he eyed the frail man in front of him, noticing the way his hands shook slightly as he gripped his coffee mug. "This isn't a place for you, Grandpa," Tyler continued, his tone dismissive. "You're in the wrong section, old-timer. Get up, or I'll have to make you." Mac didn't flinch. He simply raised his gaze, eyes piercing and calm, as he took another slow sip of his coffee. The cafeteria, once filled with the sound of chatter, fell eerily quiet as other soldiers began to notice the escalating scene. Tyler took a step closer, his voice rising. "You can't just sit here, you know. This area is for active duty only. And you, well, you're just an old man who's clearly forgotten his place." Mac's expression remained unchanged, his hands steady despite the words being thrown at him. He sat in the same seat he had for years, a quiet fixture in the chaos of the military. He wasn't a man who often spoke of his past. He didn't need to. His presence alone was enough. "I'm here for my friend," Mac said softly, his voice carrying just enough weight to stop Tyler in his tracks. "General Wallace. I owe him this." Tyler scoffed, clearly unimpressed. "General Wallace? Right. I'm sure he was best pals with the local janitor, huh?" The laughter from nearby soldiers began to ripple through the room, a mix of mockery and disbelief. But Mac didn't rise to the bait. Instead, he sat still, his eyes focused on the distant flags hanging in the corner of the room, a faint glimmer of memory in his gaze. Tyler reached out, flicking at the small, tarnished pin on Mac's jacket. "What's this, some sort of joke?" he asked, his finger pressing against the aged metal. A few of the soldiers snickered, while Mac's face remained passive. In that moment, the room seemed to shift. The sound of Tyler's voice, the smirk on his face, they all faded into the background. Mac was no longer sitting in the cafeteria. He was back in a humid jungle, surrounded by the constant noise of war. The smell of wet earth, gunpowder, and the sound of choppers hovering overhead filled his senses. The distant memory of young General Wallace, bloodied but determined, handing him that same pin for saving his life, flooded his mind. "Keep it," Wallace had said, his voice ragged from pain. "It's not much, but it's all I have to give." The vision shattered. Mac was back in the present, sitting at the table. He gently brushed Tyler's hand away from the pin. The soldiers around him were still laughing, but now there was something different in the air, an uneasy tension that was building by the second. Tyler's arrogance faltered just for a moment, his hand hovering awkwardly in the air. Before he could speak again, a sharp voice broke through the growing discomfort. "That's enough, Private Shaw," came a commanding voice from behind. Every head in the cafeteria turned as General Samuel Wright entered the room. His presence was undeniable, a force that seemed to command the very space around him. Tyler froze, his bravado evaporating as the tensed atmosphere thickened. General Wright didn't acknowledge him, instead walking straight toward Mac, his steps deliberate and measured. As he reached the table, he paused, locking eyes with Mac for a long moment. The general's face softened, a hint of reverence in his gaze. Then, without another word, General Wright stood tall and executed a perfect salute, the sharpness of the motion sending a ripple of silence through the room. "Mac," he said, his voice firm but filled with respect. "You've earned it." The entire cafeteria held its breath. Private Shaw, along with the rest of the soldiers, stood frozen in place, staring at the scene unfolding before them. General Wright, with all his authority and rank, had just acknowledged the quiet, humble veteran in a way they never could have imagined. Tyler's face flushed with embarrassment as he stood rooted to the spot, the mockery he'd aimed at Mac now weighing heavily on him. "He deserves it," General Wright added, his words ringing out across the silent room. The shock was palpable. Tyler's eyes shifted from the general to Mac, who remained seated, his expression unchanged, as if this was just another moment in the long, quiet life he had lived. But for everyone else in the room, this was a moment of awakening. The old man, once dismissed as irrelevant, had just been honored by one of the highest-ranking officers in the military. And the soldiers, once so quick to judge, now found themselves humbled. The general's salute lingered for a moment longer before he lowered his hand and turned to leave. "Carry on, Private," General Wright said, his voice now calm and final. The tension in the room slowly eased, but the lesson remained. Tyler Shaw stood motionless, his arrogance broken, as the cafeteria slowly returned to its usual noise. But for those who had witnessed the moment, things would never be quite the same again. As the hum of the cafeteria slowly returned to normal, Private Tyler Shaw stood frozen in place, his hands trembling at his sides. He watched General Samuel Wright as he walked away, every step measured, purposeful, and filled with authority. For a long moment, Tyler couldn't bring himself to move. His mind was still processing what had just happened. The sharp contrast between his own arrogance and the respect that Mac had earned without saying a word. It was a bitter pill to swallow. He had tried to humiliate the old man, to reduce him to nothing more than a relic of the past. And yet, here he was, the one who had been publicly called out. The general's presence in the room had done what Tyler's words never could. It had silenced him, exposed his ignorance, and shown him the depth of Mac's legacy. Tyler's pride, once so firm, now felt like it was slipping through his fingers like sand. He glanced around at the others in the cafeteria. Some were still staring at him, some with pity, others with silent judgment. The laughter had long faded, replaced by a heavy silence. Tyler felt the weight of their eyes. He could feel it. He had crossed a line, and there was no easy way to undo what he had done. In the corner of the room, Mac remained seated, his hands folded neatly in front of him, his coffee still in front of him, untouched for the moment. He had not reacted when General Wright saluted him, and he certainly wasn't reacting now. Mac was a man who had lived through much, and at this moment, he didn't need to speak. His presence alone, his calm dignity, spoke volumes. Tyler shifted uncomfortably on his feet, his gaze shifting between Mac and the others around him. He opened his mouth to say something, to apologize maybe, but no words came out. It was as if the weight of his actions had robbed him of his voice. For a brief, fleeting second, he wanted to approach Mac, to beg for forgiveness, to somehow make things right. But the moment passed, and he couldn't move. The damage had been done. He had disrespected a man who deserved nothing but respect. And now, it was too late to take it back. He had seen the look in General Wright's eyes, the quiet fury, the unspoken acknowledgement of the wrong that had been done. Tyler had no idea who Mac really was, what he had done for this country, for the men he had served with. And now, he understood that it was not Mac's job to tell him. It was his responsibility to learn. Slowly, almost as if waking from a daze, Tyler took a step back. He felt like the eyes of the room were on him, even though no one had said a word. They were waiting for him to make a move, to redeem himself somehow. But Tyler knew he was too late for redemption. All he could do now was stand there, feeling the sting of his own ignorance, watching as Mac continued to sit in peace. It was a lesson that Tyler would never forget, a lesson learned the hard way, through embarrassment and shame. Meanwhile, Mac's quiet presence in the cafeteria remained unchanged. The old veteran, who had faced down enemy forces, who had carried burdens far greater than any the soldiers around him could comprehend, sat quietly, knowing that respect could not be demanded, it had to be earned. And it was in this quiet, unassuming moment that Mac had taught Tyler Shaw more than any drill sergeant ever could. The next few days passed in a blur for Private Tyler Shaw. The image of General Samuel Wright standing tall, saluting Mac, played over and over in his mind. He could still hear the echo of the general's words, "He deserves it." Tyler had never experienced anything like it, that crushing weight of regret, of realizing just how wrong he had been. Each time he entered the cafeteria, he glanced nervously at Mac, who continued to sit in the same quiet manner, a man whose presence demanded respect without ever asking for it. Tyler had tried to dismiss the old man, had tried to reduce him to nothing more than a relic. But the truth was that Mac was no relic. He was living history, and now, Tyler had learned that lesson the hard way. On the third day after the incident, Tyler found himself once again at the same table in the cafeteria, nervously picking at his food. He couldn't shake the feeling that everyone was still watching him, judging him for his earlier actions. His eyes flicked toward Mac's usual seat. To his surprise, Mac wasn't there. The seat that had once been a constant fixture now sat empty. Tyler felt a pang of something he couldn't quite define. Guilt, maybe, or perhaps the feeling of missing something he hadn't realized he valued until it was gone. He pushed the thought away and tried to focus on the conversation around him. "Where's the old man?" Tyler overheard someone ask. He turned to see a group of soldiers sitting at the table next to him. One of them, a young private, was looking around as if he had misplaced something important. "Mac? Oh, you mean the Navy guy?" Another soldier replied. Tyler felt a knot tighten in his stomach. It was strange to hear Mac referred to in such a casual manner, as though he was just another soldier. "Yeah, him," the first soldier said. "I haven't seen him around lately. Guess he's got his own schedule or something." Tyler looked down at his food, feeling the weight of his previous actions settle deeper in his chest. The thought of Mac not being around made him realize just how much he had taken for granted. "Maybe he's gone home," the second soldier suggested. Tyler wasn't sure why, but he suddenly felt the urge to check on Mac, to see if he was all right. It didn't make sense, but after everything that had happened, he knew he had to do something. He pushed his tray aside, stood up, and made his way toward the exit. As he stepped out into the hallway, he found himself unsure of where to go. The base was large, and he wasn't exactly familiar with all the rooms and areas Mac frequented. But something inside him told him to follow his gut. He turned left, walking down a narrow corridor. A few turns later, he found himself at the back of the barracks. There, just outside the door, he spotted Mac, sitting on a bench, looking up at the sky. The sunlight filtered through the trees, casting soft shadows on the ground around him. Mac's weathered face was calm, his eyes focused on something far beyond the base. Tyler hesitated for a moment, unsure if he should approach. He had never seen Mac like this, so still, so at peace. But Tyler knew he couldn't just leave things as they were. He stepped forward, his boots making soft noises on the gravel as he approached. Mac didn't turn to look at him. "You all right, Mac?" Tyler asked, his voice quieter than usual. Mac's gaze shifted slowly to meet his. For a moment, there was silence, the air thick with the weight of unsaid words. Finally, Mac spoke. "I'm good, son," he said, his voice low but steady. "Just enjoying the quiet." Tyler nodded, unsure of what to say next. He stood there, feeling the awkwardness between them. "I wanted to apologize," Tyler said, his words rushing out before he could stop them. I was wrong before. About everything. I shouldn't have treated you like that." Mac smiled faintly, the expression more like a knowing nod than anything else. "You're young," he said. "You'll learn. We all do, in our own time." Tyler felt a weight lift off his shoulders at the words, though he knew he hadn't fully earned the forgiveness he sought. "Thanks," Tyler said quietly. He stood there for a while, unsure of whether to leave or stay, but after a few minutes, he nodded again and turned to walk away. As he did, he felt a strange sense of peace, as though, in that one brief moment, he had begun to understand what Mac had been trying to teach him all along. Respect wasn't something that could be demanded. It had to be earned, slowly, over time, through actions, through understanding. And for the first time, Tyler felt like he was on the right path to earning it. The days following his brief encounter with Mac felt like they moved in slow motion for Private Tyler Shaw. There was something different about him now, something that couldn't be easily explained. It wasn't just that he had apologized or that Mac had given him a quiet nod of understanding. It was the realization that he had witnessed something far greater than himself, something that had shaken him to his core. Every day, Tyler found himself looking at Mac differently, not as the frail old man he had initially dismissed, but as someone who had lived a life of valor, someone whose respect could not be bought with words. Tyler sat alone in his barracks one evening, staring at the wall, his mind racing with thoughts. He hadn't yet fully processed what had happened, but one thing was clear. He could never look at the world the same way again. His phone buzzed, pulling him out of his thoughts. It was a text from his friend, Private Ryan. "Hey, are you coming to the game tonight? You need to get out of your head." Tyler stared at the message for a long time, but he wasn't sure he could just go on like everything was normal. He had seen something profound, something that left a mark on him that couldn't be erased with distractions. Instead of responding, he put the phone down and grabbed his jacket. There was something else he needed to do. He walked down the narrow hallway of the barracks, his boots heavy with each step. The air was cool, the kind of crisp air that made everything feel sharper, clearer. As he stepped into the main hallway, He turned toward the small courtyard at the back of the base where Mac had been sitting a few days ago, the quiet place where the veteran had found his peace. When Tyler reached the spot, he saw that Mac was there again, sitting on the same bench. His back was straight, his eyes distant, but Tyler could tell that Mac was aware of his presence. Without speaking, Tyler sat down next to him. For a while, neither of them said anything. It was the kind of silence that felt comfortable, not awkward. Finally, Mac spoke. "You look troubled," he said in a low, steady voice. Tyler exhaled slowly, nodding. I can't stop thinking about what happened. About you. About how I treated you." Mac nodded, but his gaze remained focused on the horizon, where the sun was setting, casting long shadows across the courtyard. "It's not about what you said, Tyler. It's about what you do next." Tyler swallowed hard. "I don't know. If I can make up for what I did." "You can," Mac replied, his voice calm and unwavering. "But you have to start by being honest with yourself. You have to recognize the value in people before it's too late." Tyler sat in silence, letting the words sink in. He had always been so quick to judge, to assume he knew everything about someone based on their appearance, their age, or their position. But now, he realized how little he had truly understood. I think I've been looking at this all wrong," Tyler admitted quietly. "I've been focused on the wrong things." Mac gave him a small smile, but it was a smile of understanding, not of mockery. "That's the first step," he said. "You're on your way." Tyler looked over at Mac, really looked at him for the first time. He saw the lines in his face, the weariness in his eyes, but there was also a strength there, a quiet strength that Tyler had never fully appreciated until now. For a moment, they just sat there, watching the last of the sunlight fade away, both of them wrapped in the peace of that shared silence. Tyler felt something shift inside him. It wasn't a sudden revelation, but a gradual understanding that he was no longer the person he had been when he walked into the cafeteria that day. There was still much for him to learn, and he knew that the path ahead wouldn't be easy. But as he sat there beside Mac, he understood something deeper. Respect wasn't just about acknowledging someone's service or their accomplishments. It was about recognizing their humanity, their struggles, and their worth. And that was something Tyler had to start practicing every day. He stood up slowly, turning to Mac. "Thank you," he said, his voice sincere. "I don't know if I'll ever be able to repay you for what you've shown me, but I'm going to try." Mac nodded. "Just remember, it's the small things that matter most. The things that go unnoticed by others, but mean the world to the person who's living them." With that, Tyler turned and walked away, a sense of clarity settling in his chest. He had a long way to go, but for the first time, he felt like he was on the right path. And as he walked back to his barracks, he knew that Mac's lesson would stay with him forever. Tyler Shaw's mornings had become a routine of reflection. He still couldn't shake the image of Mac sitting there quietly, the man whose life had been full of stories he had yet to tell. Tyler's new respect for the veteran had opened his eyes to something he'd never considered before, the weight of history that people carried with them, whether they shared it or not. Each day, Tyler found himself looking at the older soldiers, wondering who they had been before they wore the uniform, what battles they had fought, what sacrifices they had made. It wasn't just about the present, it was about everything that led them here. But it wasn't just Mac who had affected him. It was the realization that Tyler had been living his life without understanding the depth of others. That day in the cafeteria, when he had seen General Wright salute Mac, had been the catalyst. Since then, Tyler had been searching for a way to show that he had changed. He had apologized to Mac, but something in him told him there was more he had to do, something that would show his growth, something that wasn't just words. Tyler found himself walking toward the military history display in the main hall of the base. The area was often quiet, filled with old relics of wars long past. It was a place where the past seemed to live, a reminder of the sacrifices that had been made. Tyler had passed it countless times, but never really stopped to look. Today he did. As he moved past the displays of old rifles, medals, and war memorabilia, one plaque caught his attention. It was dedicated to soldiers who had served in the most difficult missions, those who had gone above and beyond. Tyler stopped in front of it, reading the names of the soldiers who had earned the highest honors. And then something caught his eye, a small, faded photograph. It was of a young man in uniform, standing with a group of soldiers. The photo was old, the edges frayed, but the face of the young man was familiar. Tyler leaned in closer. The name beneath the photo read, Elliot Mack McAllister, U.S. Navy, Medal of Honor recipient. Tyler felt a lump form in his throat as he stared at the picture. It wasn't just Mack's name, it was the history behind it, the legacy that Tyler had only just begun to understand. He stood there for a long time, the weight of the realization pressing down on him. Mack hadn't just been some old man sitting in the cafeteria. He had been a hero, a man whose bravery had saved lives, a man who had sacrificed more than Tyler could even imagine. When Tyler left the display, he walked with a new sense of purpose. He wasn't just walking with the weight of his past mistakes anymore. He was walking with the knowledge that respect could never be given lightly. As he made his way back to the barracks, Tyler saw Mack sitting outside again, just as he had before. This time, Tyler didn't hesitate. He walked straight up to him. "Mack," Tyler said, his voice full of respect. "I saw your name in the history display. I just wanted to say, I had no idea. I'm sorry for how I treated you." Mack looked up at him, the faintest smile on his face. "No need for apologies, son," he said quietly. "The past is the past, but it's good to see you looking at the world differently now." Tyler nodded, the weight of the moment sinking in. He had come full circle, not just in his understanding of Mack, but in his understanding of what it meant to truly respect someone. It wasn't enough to just say the words. It had to come from within, and that was something Tyler would carry with him for the rest of his life. The following weeks on base were different for Private Tyler Shaw. The once familiar routine of daily life had started to shift. He couldn't walk through the halls without thinking about the lessons he had learned, not just from the military, but from Mack. His actions had changed, his thoughts more intentional. Every day, Tyler found himself taking a step back before reacting, wondering what the right thing to do was, what the honorable thing was. It was a new way of thinking for him. One morning, Tyler was sitting in the mess hall, eating his breakfast, when he saw Mack enter. The old veteran moved slowly but with purpose, his presence as unassuming as ever. Tyler felt a pang of guilt and respect stir within him. Without thinking, he stood up and waved at Mack. The old man's eyes met his, and Tyler smiled. "Mack, over here," he called, his voice steady. Mack nodded and made his way over to the table, settling into the chair across from Tyler. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Tyler could feel the awkwardness in the air. It wasn't that he didn't respect Mack, quite the opposite. But the weight of their last conversation, of everything he had learned, still lingered. "How are you doing today, son?" Mack asked, breaking the silence. Tyler smiled, a genuine smile that came more easily now. "I'm good, Mack. Things are different. Better, actually." Mack gave him a knowing look. "That's the way life works, son. We learn, we change, and we keep moving forward. But it takes time." Tyler nodded, looking down at his plate for a moment. "I know. I didn't realize how much I was missing before." "Most people don't," Mack said softly. "But the important thing is that you see it now. That's what matters." Tyler looked at him, grateful for the words, but also aware of the deeper meaning behind them. He realized that Mack wasn't just talking about himself or about Tyler. He was talking about life. It was all too easy to get caught up in the small moments, to judge others or dismiss their worth. But there was so much more beneath the surface of everyone. Tyler knew that now. He leaned back in his chair and looked out the window, watching as the sun began to rise over the base. The soft golden light filtered through the trees, casting long shadows across the ground. It was a peaceful morning, the kind of morning that made you feel like anything was possible. "You know, Mack," Tyler said, breaking the quiet, "I've been thinking about something you said to me the other day. About respect. It's not something you can demand, but something you have to earn." Mack nodded, his eyes calm and steady. "That's right. Respect isn't a given. It's something you show every day, with your actions, your words, and how you treat others." Tyler took a deep breath, feeling a sense of clarity settle in his chest. "I think I understand now. I've been trying too hard to prove myself, to act like I know everything. But I see now it's not about that. It's about being there for others, about showing that you care." Mack smiled. Faintly. "You're on the right track, son. Just keep walking that path. It's not always easy, but it's always worth it." Tyler smiled, feeling a weight lift off his shoulders. He was no longer the same person who had walked onto the base months ago. He had learned to look beyond the surface, to understand the value of patience and respect, and most importantly, to see people for who they truly were, not just what they appeared to be. As he sat there with Mac, he realized that these lessons were not just about making amends for past mistakes. They were about building a future, one where respect was given freely, where actions spoke louder than words, and where people treated each other with the dignity they deserved. Tyler didn't have all the answers yet, but he knew one thing for sure. He was ready to keep learning, and he was ready to move forward, with Mac's lessons guiding him every step of the way. Private Tyler Shaw stood at attention as he waited for the meeting to start. It had been weeks since that day in the cafeteria, and he felt a sense of calm that he hadn't experienced before. The lessons Mac had taught him echoed in his mind, and Tyler knew that he was becoming a different person. He had begun to understand the true meaning of respect, not as something demanded, but as something earned and given. As he stood there, he couldn't help but reflect on how far he had come. There was a change in him now, something subtle yet powerful, a shift in his perspective that he hadn't even realized was happening until it had already taken root. When he first arrived at the base, he had been driven by pride, eager to prove himself. But now, he found himself more focused on understanding others, seeing them for who they really were instead of judging them based on appearances or assumptions. Tyler had learned that respect was a quiet, powerful force, one that could transform relationships and shape the way people interacted with each other. As the meeting began, Tyler sat down with his fellow soldiers, listening intently to the briefing. His mind, however, kept wandering back to Mac, who had become a constant source of inspiration for him. Every interaction with the old man had left Tyler with a new understanding of what it meant to be a true leader, not just someone in charge, but someone who had earned the trust and respect of those around them. After the meeting, Tyler found himself walking toward the base's small park, where he often saw Mac sitting, reading a book or simply enjoying the quiet. As he approached, he saw the familiar figure sitting on the bench, the sun casting a warm glow on his face. Tyler felt a surge of gratitude for the lessons Mac had shared with him, and he knew that he needed to express it. "Mac," Tyler called out, his voice steady. The old man looked up, his eyes lighting up with recognition. "Tyler, my boy," Mac said with a smile. "What's on your mind?" Tyler sat down beside him, the familiar silence between them comforting. "I've been thinking about everything you've taught me," Tyler began. "I've been learning to look at people differently, to understand that there's more to them than meets the eye. I've been trying to show respect in the way I treat others." Mac nodded slowly, his eyes thoughtful. "That's the key, son," he said. "Respect isn't just about words, it's about actions. You show it every day, in the way you carry yourself, in the way you listen, in the way you treat people. It's not something you can fake." Tyler took a deep breath, feeling a sense of peace settle over him. "I think I'm starting to get it," he said quietly. "And I'm starting to see how much I've missed before. I want to be someone people respect, not because of my rank or position, but because of who I am and how I treat others." Max smiled, a small, knowing smile that seemed to speak volumes. "You're on the right path, Tyler. Keep walking it, and the rest will follow. It's not about being perfect, but about doing your best every day." Tyler nodded, feeling the weight of the moment sink in. He was no longer the man he had been when he first arrived at the base, eager to prove himself, eager to make a name for himself. Now, he understood that true respect came from within, from the way you lived your life and treated others. As he stood up to leave, Tyler felt a deep sense of gratitude for Mac and the lessons he had learned. He wasn't sure what the future held, but for the first time, he was confident that he was on the right path. The path of respect, understanding, and growth. And as he walked away, he knew that Mac's influence would stay with him, guiding him in every step he took. Weeks had passed since that pivotal conversation with Mac, and for Private Tyler Shaw, life on base had taken on a new rhythm. Each morning, as he went about his duties, he found himself thinking back to what he had learned from the old man. It was like an internal shift had occurred, one that didn't require grand gestures or overt changes. It was subtle but profound. He no longer walked through the base with the same bravado he once had. His shoulders, which used to carry the weight of self-doubt and the need to prove himself, now felt lighter, more at ease. He had come to understand that respect wasn't just something to be demanded or earned through rank. It was something that came with understanding, with patience, and most importantly, with action. Tyler had taken those lessons to heart. He had started looking at the world around him differently. The young soldiers, the officers, Even the civilians he encountered, he had learned to see them for who they truly were, not just based on their position or appearance, but on the depth of their experiences. One afternoon, while Tyler was taking a break on the front steps of the barracks, he saw Mac coming towards him. The old man was carrying a stack of papers, likely some work he had volunteered to do for the base. His gait was slow but steady, his posture unchanged, exactly as Tyler had come to expect. Tyler stood up and waved, calling out to him. "Mac, got a minute?" Mac looked up, a slight smile appearing on his face as he saw Tyler. "Always got time for you, son," he replied, moving over to where Tyler was standing. The two sat down on the steps together, the familiar silence between them no longer awkward, but comfortable. Tyler turned to Mac, his voice steady but thoughtful. "I've been thinking a lot about what you said, about the way we see people." Mac raised an eyebrow, clearly interested. "And what have you figured out?" "I think I understand now," Tyler said, his gaze shifting to the ground before meeting Mac's eyes. "It's not about rank. It's not about what people do for a living. It's about who they are when no one's looking. How they carry themselves, how they treat others. That's what earns respect. And I see it now. I see it in you." Mac nodded, his eyes softening. "Good. You're getting it." The words didn't come with the same weight they had the first time Mac had spoken them. This time, Tyler could see the genuine pride in the old man's eyes, the kind that comes not from a title or an award, but from witnessing growth in someone else. "I've noticed a change in you too," Mac continued. "You've got a better head on your shoulders now. You're learning to lead, not by command, but by example." Tyler nodded, feeling a warmth spread through him. It wasn't the kind of warmth that came from praise, but from a deeper sense of understanding. He realized that the change within him wasn't just for himself. It was a change that would ripple out to those around him, shaping the way he interacted with others. As they sat there, chatting quietly, a few of the younger soldiers walked by. Tyler noticed them glancing at him, their eyes filled with curiosity. They had seen the transformation in him, just as he had seen the potential in them. For the first time, Tyler felt like he was part of something bigger than himself. He wasn't just a soldier anymore. He was becoming a person others could look up to, not because of his rank, but because of the way he carried himself. Mac's lessons had sunk deep into his soul, and Tyler knew that he would continue to carry them with him for the rest of his life. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the base, Tyler felt a sense of peace he had never known. He had found something more valuable than any rank or medal. He had found the power of respect, and it was a power that no one could take away from him. Months had passed, and for Private Tyler Shaw, the lessons he had learned from Mac were now a part of his daily life. No longer driven by the need to prove himself, Tyler had come to understand the true meaning of respect, not just for others, but for himself as well. He had come a long way since that first encounter, and he could feel the shift in the way he carried himself. It wasn't about authority anymore. It was about leadership through example. Tyler had begun to earn the respect of those around him, not because of his rank or title, but because of how he treated people. He wasn't perfect, but he was becoming someone others could look up to, someone who understood that respect was a two-way street. One evening, Tyler was walking back from the gym when he noticed a small group of soldiers gathered outside the barracks. They were laughing, joking around, but as he approached, the laughter stopped. Tyler didn't think much of it at first, but as he walked past, he could hear a voice, one he recognized, coming from the group. "Hey, look, it's Shaw, the new leader." The words weren't said with mockery, but with a tone of respect. Tyler turned, surprised to see that they were referring to him. One of the soldiers, a young private named Jackson, smiled at him. "You've changed, Shaw, for the better." Tyler didn't know what to say at first, but he smiled and nodded. "Thanks, Jackson," he said, his voice steady. "I've been trying." The group fell silent for a moment, and Tyler could feel their eyes on him. It was an odd feeling, but it was also one he had come to appreciate. It wasn't about praise or recognition. It was about the quiet understanding that came with earning someone's respect. As he continued on his way to his room, Tyler couldn't help but think about how far he had come. There had been a time when he would have taken that kind of comment as an invitation to boast or to remind everyone of his rank. But now he simply took it in stride. He knew that his actions were speaking louder than any words ever could. The next morning, Tyler found himself in the break room, getting a cup of coffee when he saw Max sitting at the table. The old man was reading, as usual, lost in the pages of his book. Tyler had grown accustomed to seeing Mac there, the quiet presence of a man who had lived a lifetime of stories he didn't often share. It was rare that Mac would speak unless spoken to, but when he did, it always left a mark. Tyler took a deep breath, walked over, and sat down beside him. "Morning, Mac," he said. The old man looked up, giving him a small nod. "Morning, son," Mac replied in his usual calm voice. "How's everything?" Tyler smiled. "Better. I'm starting to feel like I'm finding my way." Mac looked at him, his eyes piercing, but with a softness that Tyler had come to understand. "It's not about finding your way, son. It's about making it." Tyler nodded, feeling the weight of the words sink in. He had made his way here, step by step, and while the path ahead was still uncertain, he knew he was on the right track. He wasn't just walking through life anymore. He was living it with intention. As the days passed, Tyler continued to grow. His relationship with his fellow soldiers was stronger, his leadership more respected. He had learned that leadership wasn't about being in charge. It was about being there for the people you led, about showing them that you valued them. And as he looked across the base, he knew that this new path, this new way of seeing the world, was something he could never turn back from. It wasn't just the change in others that mattered. It was the change within himself. And as he stood there with Mac, the lessons had come full circle. Tyler wasn't just a soldier anymore. He was a man who understood the power of respect, of humility, and of leading with honor. Months had passed since that morning on the steps with Mac, and Private Tyler Shaw had settled into a rhythm that felt right. He had begun to understand the value of his role, not just as a soldier, but as someone who could lead with respect and humility. The shift within him had not gone unnoticed. Fellow soldiers greeted him differently now, with more respect, but it wasn't just the soldiers. Officers, too, seemed to regard him with a quiet understanding. Tyler was no longer just another young recruit trying to prove himself. He had earned something far more valuable. It wasn't authority. It wasn't power. It was the trust and respect of those around him. As time passed, Tyler found himself spending more and more time with Mac. The old man, with his quiet wisdom and unassuming strength, had become more than a mentor. He had become a constant presence in Tyler's life, someone who had shown him a way to live that was rooted in honor and respect. Tyler had learned that true leadership wasn't about commanding others. It was about earning their trust and showing them that you cared. One afternoon, Tyler walked into the mess hall after a long morning of training. He was tired, but there was a quiet confidence in his step that hadn't been there before. He scanned the room, his eyes settling on the familiar figure of Mac, sitting in his usual spot by the window, a book in hand. Without thinking, Tyler made his way over and sat down across from him. "Mind if I join you, Mac?" he asked with a smile. Mac looked up, his eyes twinkling. "Of course not, son. Pull up a chair." Tyler sat down, settling into the comfortable silence between them. He could feel the weight of the changes in him, the way he saw the world and his place in it. It wasn't just the military training that had shaped him. It was the lessons he had learned from Mac, the old man who had quietly shown him how to be a better man. "You know," Tyler said after a few moments, breaking the silence, "I've been thinking a lot about the way I've been living my life. I spent so much time thinking I had to prove something to everyone. But now I see that what matters is how you carry yourself, how you treat others." Mac nodded slowly, taking a sip of his coffee. "That's the truth right there, son. People will remember how you made them feel long after they've forgotten your rank, your uniform, or your title. It's the little things that matter. The respect you show to others is what earns you their respect in return." Tyler smiled, feeling a sense of peace settle over him. He had learned so much from this quiet man sitting across from him, and for the first time, he truly understood the depth of Mac's words. "I've started to see things differently," Tyler continued. "I'm not just following orders anymore. I'm trying to lead by example, to show the people around me that respect isn't something you demand, it's something you give." Mac's eyes softened. "You're getting it, son. You'll make a fine leader one day, not because of your rank, but because of your heart." Tyler sat there, in silence for a moment, letting the words sink in. He had come so far from the brash young soldier he had once been, and though the road ahead was still long, he knew he was on the right path. He wasn't just earning respect anymore. He was learning to give it freely. As the conversation continued, Tyler realized that he wasn't just learning about leadership or respect. He was learning about life itself. It wasn't about the victories or the accolades. It was about the way you treated the people around you, the way you lived your life with integrity and purpose. And that was a lesson that would stay with him forever. When Tyler left the mess hall that afternoon, he felt lighter, more at ease than he had in a long time. He had come to understand that the real strength wasn't in the uniform he wore or the rank he held. It was in the way he carried himself, the way he treated others, and the way he learned from those who had come before him. And as he walked down the path toward his next duty, he knew that no matter what came next, he would face it with the lessons Mac had taught him, ready to lead with respect and honor. Tyler Shaw stood in the corner of the base, watching as soldiers gathered for their morning briefing. It was a busy day, and he could feel the weight of the responsibilities on his shoulders, but this time it felt different. He wasn't just going through the motions like he once had. Now, every action, every decision he made, came from a place of understanding. He had learned how to lead with respect, and it wasn't just about following orders anymore. It was about guiding others with intention. As the briefing began, Tyler took his usual seat, scanning the room. He noticed the young soldiers looking to him for guidance, not because of his rank, but because of the way he carried himself. He had earned their respect, not by demanding it, but by showing them the way through his actions. Mac's lessons had sunken deep, and Tyler knew he was no longer the same person who had first walked onto the base. After the briefing, Tyler walked back to his barracks, lost in thought. The sun was setting, casting a golden hue over the base, and Tyler couldn't help but feel grateful for the peace he had found in his life. It wasn't the kind of peace that came from external circumstances. It was the peace that came from within, knowing he had made changes in himself, knowing that he was living with purpose. As he entered his room, he was surprised to find Mac waiting for him. The old man was sitting on his bed, as calm and unassuming as ever. Tyler smiled, feeling a warmth spread through him. "Mac," Tyler said, his voice steady. "I've been thinking a lot about what you said the other day, about leading by example." Mac looked up, a small smile forming on his face. "And what have you learned?" "I've learned that leadership isn't about being in charge," Tyler said, sitting down beside him. "It's about making a difference in people's lives, no matter how small. It's about showing them that you care, and that you're willing to put in the effort for their sake." Mac nodded, his eyes softening. "That's exactly right. Leadership isn't about orders or titles. It's about your actions. People will follow you because they trust you, because they believe in you." Tyler sat in silence for a moment, reflecting on the words. It wasn't just about leading others. It was about being someone others could rely on, someone who would do what needed to be done without hesitation. "I still have a lot to learn," Tyler admitted. "But I think I'm on the right path now." Max smiled, his gaze filled with pride. "You are, son. You're doing just fine." Tyler felt a deep sense of peace settle in his chest. He wasn't looking for validation anymore. He was learning to trust himself, to trust that he was capable of making a difference. It was a new way of living, one that came from within, and he knew he would carry these lessons with him for the rest of his life. As the night grew darker, Tyler stood up, feeling more confident than ever. "Thanks, Mac," he said, offering a genuine smile. "I couldn't have done it without you." Mac simply nodded, his eyes warm. "You've always had it in you, son. You just had to find it." With that, Tyler walked out into the night, feeling lighter, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. He wasn't just a soldier anymore. He was a leader. And he knew that with each step, he was becoming the man he had always wanted to be. Tyler Shaw had been adjusting to his new role, one that felt more genuine than any he had held before. The days blurred together with the pace of his training, but everything felt different. It wasn't just the work or the routine. It was the way he saw the people around him now. He had become more aware of their struggles, their sacrifices, and their worth. It wasn't about titles anymore. It was about people. And for the first time, Tyler felt like he was truly part of something bigger than himself. As the weeks passed, Tyler's relationship with Mac grew even deeper. They spent more time together, talking about life, about service, about the lessons that Mac had learned over the years. Tyler had come to realize that Mac was more than just a veteran. He was a living testament to the power of humility, strength, and wisdom. Tyler had learned that leadership wasn't just about commanding. It was about earning respect through actions, through the way you treated people, and through the way you helped others grow. One evening, after a long day of training, Tyler found himself walking to the small park where Mac often sat. The old man was there, as always, sitting on a bench, looking out at the horizon. Tyler felt a deep sense of gratitude as he approached. He had learned so much from Mac, but he also knew he had more to learn. As he sat down next to Mac, the old man looked at him, his expression calm and steady. "You're looking thoughtful, son," Mac said quietly. Tyler smiled, feeling the weight of the words that had shaped him over the past few months. "I've been thinking a lot about what you've taught me, Mac. About respect, about leadership, about how to be someone people can count on." Mac nodded, his eyes reflecting the wisdom of a lifetime. "And what have you learned, son?" Tyler thought for a moment, his gaze fixed on the ground in front of him. "I've learned that it's not about being the best. It's about doing what's right, even when no one is watching. It's about treating people with dignity, no matter who they are." Mac smiled, the corners of his eyes crinkling. "You're getting it, Tyler. Leadership is about setting an example. It's not about being perfect. It's about doing the best you can every day and showing others that they matter." Tyler nodded, feeling a sense of peace settle in his chest. The last few months had been full of growth, but there was still so much more to discover. He knew the path wouldn't always be easy, but he was ready for it. "I think I'm starting to understand what it means to lead," Tyler said. "It's not just about giving orders. It's about showing others that you care, that you're invested in their success." Mac placed a hand on Tyler's shoulder, his grip firm yet gentle. "That's right, son. You're not just a soldier anymore. You're becoming a leader, and that's something that'll stay with you for the rest of your life." Tyler stood up, feeling the weight of Mac's words sink in. "Thanks, Mac, for everything. I wouldn't be here without you." Mac looked up at him, his gaze filled with pride. "You would have gotten here eventually, son, but I'm glad I could help you see it sooner." As Tyler walked away, the evening sun casting long shadows across the base, he knew that the lessons he had learned from Mac were not just about military life. They were about life itself. The respect, the leadership, the strength of character. It wasn't about rank or accolades. It was about how you treated people, how you stood up for what was right, and how you earned the respect of others through your actions. And Tyler was ready to carry those lessons with him, wherever the journey took him next. Months passed, and for Private Tyler Shaw, the changes in himself were undeniable. He had come a long way from the arrogant young soldier he once was. Now, he carried himself with the quiet confidence of someone who understood the value of respect and leadership. It wasn't about the title anymore, not about the rank. It was about how you treated people, how you showed up every day, and how you earned the trust of those around you. He had learned that lesson from Mac, the old Navy veteran who had become more than just a mentor. He had become a symbol of what true leadership looked like. Tyler had taken those lessons to heart and had begun applying them not just on base, but in his personal life. As well, his relationships with his fellow soldiers had changed, becoming more meaningful and rooted in trust. They didn't see him as just another guy in uniform anymore. They saw him as someone who led by example. The young recruits, those who had once been quick to dismiss him, now came to him for advice, looking to him for guidance. Tyler had earned their respect, and it wasn't something that could be taken away. One afternoon, as Tyler was finishing up his duties for the day, he saw Max sitting on the same bench where they had shared countless conversations. The old man was looking out at the horizon, the same quiet presence he had always been. Tyler felt a sense of gratitude wash over him as he approached. "Hey, Mac," Tyler said, walking up to him. Mac turned to look at him, a faint smile forming on his face. "Hey there, son. How's everything going?" Tyler sat down beside him, feeling a deep sense of peace in his chest. "It's going well," Tyler said. "I've been thinking a lot about everything you've taught me, about leadership, respect, and what it means to truly earn someone's trust." Mac nodded slowly, his gaze focused on the horizon. "You're learning, son. That's what matters. Leadership isn't about being the loudest or the strongest. It's about being the one people can count on, the one who shows them what it means to do the right thing, even when it's hard." Tyler nodded, feeling the weight of the words. He had heard them before, but now they held a deeper meaning. "I've learned that," Tyler said quietly, "and I'm still learning. I know I'm not perfect, but I'm doing my best." Max smiled, the kind of smile that came with understanding. "That's all any of us can do, son. Keep doing your best. Keep leading by example." Tyler sat there for a long time, just enjoying the silence and the company of the old man. He had come to appreciate these quiet moments with Mac, moments that didn't require words but still spoke volumes. Mac had shown him what it meant to be a leader, not just through his words, but through his actions, through the way he lived his life. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows over the base, Tyler felt a sense of clarity settle within him. He knew that he was on the right path, that the lessons he had learned from Mac would stay with him for the rest of his life. And as he looked at the horizon, he realized that his journey was just beginning. He wasn't the same person who had walked onto the base all those months ago. He had grown, and with every step, he would continue to grow. And as he walked away from the bench, he knew that he was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, knowing that he had the strength, the wisdom, and the respect to lead the way.